Yo, book nerds, I finished reading AKATA Warrior by Nnedi Okorafor. Again, I'm sorry if I am mispronouncing that author's name. This is the second book in the, let's see if I can say it, Nsibidi Scripts Series. It's a weird word. That's how I say it in my head anyway. But I loved this book. The first book, AKATA Witch, was great. I loved it, but it felt like we were just skimming the surface of this world, and this book felt like we just dived headfirst in, and I was loving it the entire way. So if you haven't seen my first review or read the first book, go check those out, because I'm just going to assume that you have. And so here's your spoiler alert up front, because I will kind of spoil some things if you haven't read those other book. And I'm going to talk about this book too, so yeah. But anyway, this story is a continuation of Sunny's story, and she is totally getting into her leoparddom. And leoparddom is basically being a quote-unquote witch. She has juju magic. It's wonderful. I love it. We really dive into that. It's awesome. And Sunny can read Nsibidi, and Nsibidi is the language of the spirits, basically, and not everyone can read it. And basically, when you're reading Nsibidi, you are like sucked in. You can see it. Basically, you're like hallucinating when you're reading it. And when you're reading it, time passes like weirdly. So like you read a page and 2 hours have passed, and when you're done reading, you're like famished and starving, and like if you're not careful, you could actually die from reading Nsibidi. That is so cool. The Nsibidi is touched on in the first book, but not very much. And it's hit on a lot more in this book, and I loved it. I ate it all up. I was so intrigued by Nsibidi. And so Sunny can read this Nsibidi, and it's just so cool. So basically, Sunny's going on another quest similar to the first book, and she has her friends along for the ride, and it's just lovely. I loved this world. I just can't get enough. I'm so excited for book 3. My copy of this book is really beat up. It is not in the best shape. When I ordered it, I didn't notice that it was a used copy, but oh well. I still got a great story out of it. I wasn't originally reading this for class. The first book in the series I was reading for class, but then I found out for class I had to read 2 additional books of my choosing, so I decided to read books 2 and 3 for that class. So now I kind of am reading these for class. So it all worked out. Sunny is juggling 2 worlds now in this book. She is juggling being a leopard person, and then juggling that with having a family that has no idea that this world even exists. So she's studying for regular school, and then she's studying for leopard school, and she is staying up really late, sneaking out. And honestly, like, I kind of related to her because, man, I'm having to stay up super late studying for my classes lately, and I'm exhausted. So I totally related to her on that front. There was a really awesome quote, though. I'm gonna find it here. It just like sums up why I love reading and why I wanted to go back to school. It's a short little 5-word sentence, and it is, "To learn is to live." I loved that. I love that. It's so beautiful. And if you're not learning, you're stagnant. You're not living. And that's like my whole philosophy on life. I consider myself to be a forever student. So even when I'm not in school, like, I still want to be learning things. And so I loved that line. It's so simple and so true. Another thing I really enjoyed about this book is we get to see Sunny's brothers a little more. Sunny has 2 brothers, and they're both older than her, and they're in the first book, but they don't really play a huge role. And Sunny didn't really have a close relationship with her brothers, but she grows closer to them because her brothers know something is going on with her, but they aren't sure what, and they just feel protective of her, as brothers should. Good brothers anyway. And so watching her relationship with her brothers develop through this book was beautiful. I loved it. I have brothers. I have 3 brothers, and so they're all younger than me though, but it's still similar. Like, I would do anything for them and they would do anything for me, and that was their relationship in here between Sunny and her brothers. It was wonderful. I just ate that up. It was just so sweet. The theme from the first book, that life continues without you and that the world is bigger than you, is definitely continued in this book. Sunny had always thought that that idea was kind of callous, but she learns to appreciate it in this book, and I liked that. And there's just some interesting dynamics in this one. Sunny's kind of torn between two worlds. She's torn between her life as a leopard person and her old life with her family, and the more she grows into her leoparddom, the further away from her family she feels, and it makes her sad. She also is torn in two, literally, in this book. She has her spirit face, Nyanwu, and her and Nyanwu are physically separated. They call it doubling. She is separated from her spirit. And I'm not going to go into why that happened. You'll have to read the book to find it out. But she's struggling with the fact that there is distance now between her physical body and her spiritual life. And so she's just literally struggling between her leopard world and the lamb world, and then the wilderness, which is the spirit world, and the mundane world, which is this physical world that we live in. And I really liked those parallels. There's a lot of mention in this book about oil spills, and this takes place in Nigeria. So this made me think again of Oil on Water, which I also recently read, which takes place in Nigeria. And go check out this review if you haven't already. But location and the oil spills are really all these books have in common, so they're very different. But anyway, there's a lot to talk about oil spills and corruption in here as well, but it's a different take on it because this is obviously fantasy, whereas Oil on Water is environmental literature. There were some references in here that I enjoyed too, because while reading this, I did feel like it kind of is like Harry Potter, because she's at a magical school, so how do you get away from Harry Potter, obviously? It's very different from Harry Potter, but it's hard not to see the similarities. And we even get a Harry Potter reference in here. Sunny and Chi-Chi are talking about being doubled, and Chi-Chi won't say the word doubled. And Sunny goes, "You mean being doubled? Sheesh, it's not like Voldemort's name. You can say it aloud." And so I thought that was funny. We also got a Lord of the Rings reference here too. They're talking about a book, and it says, it's got a mind of its own, like that ring in Lord of the Rings. The book isn't all evil, but it's not all good either. And so I liked those references. There is also a giant spider in this book called Udide or Udidi. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it. I kind of went back and forth between pronouncing it Udide and Udidi. I think Udide is how I would say it. I don't know. There's some weird spellings for names in here. You just gotta roll with it. But Udide is this giant spider, and it reminded me of Aragog from Harry Potter and Shelob from Lord of the Rings. So obviously, like giant spider, of course you're gonna have those references. But Udide is a lot nicer. I mean, she's not nice, but she's nicer than the other two giant spiders. You'll just have to read to get what I mean. There is also a Bible quote in here, which I was not expecting. It kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop. "When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, neither shall the flames scorch you." The book of Isaiah, chapter 43, verse 2. I did not expect the Bible quote in here, but there you go. We do meet God in here, although it's not the Christian God, so that is interesting. We meet Chukwu, who is the supreme being, and that could have really easily been cheesy and almost a cop-out. Like, oh, you wrote your character into a corner. How is she going to get out of it? God shows up. But it didn't feel that way at all. It actually worked really well, and I liked it. So yeah. Another thing that worked really well in here that I don't normally like, it's a YA book, and there was a YA trope in here. There was a love triangle in here, but it wasn't a typical love triangle. The main character, Sunny, is not involved in it. It is Chi-Chi, and she is dating Sasha and one of Sunny's brothers, who's also named Chukwu. And I actually thought it was kind of hilarious because both guys know that Chi-Chi's dating both of them, and both guys are mad about it, yet neither of them will break up with her. And Chi-Chi's just like, I'm gonna do what I want. And like, I guess it's not really cheating if everybody is aware of the situation and they could break up with her, yet they don't. And she's open and honest with them about what she's doing. And Chi-Chi's just so mischievous, like, she's doing it just to get a rise out of them for entertainment. Like, it's a trope that's typical for YA, a love triangle, but it was turned on its head and I liked it. It was pretty good. Usually it's the young girl that can't choose between two guys and doesn't know what to do. This time it's a young girl that won't choose between two guys because she's having fun messing with them. Not saying that that is a good thing. No, it's really not. She really shouldn't be doing that. And please don't do that to people in real life. But reading about it in here was entertaining. I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, that's all I really have to say about this book. I just thought this was great. I do think I like this one better than the first book. It just dove way deeper into everything that the first book talked about. The first book had so much world building to do, and we feel like we just skimmed the surface of something really deep, and this book didn't have to build the world now. We could just dive right in, and I loved it. Very, very, very much enjoyed this. Definitely recommend. If you've read this book, let me know your thoughts, and we can chat in the comments. That's all for me this week. Hit like and subscribe. Thanks for talking books with me.